Hi, my name is Deeptha Vivenkanand, and I am a storyteller and an educator. I live in Chandigarh, which is in the north of India, but my roots are all in the south of India. I was born and raised in Madras, which is in the state of Tamil Nadu. And then I lived for many years in Bangalore, which is the capital of the southern state of Karnataka. And now I live in Chandigarh, which is part of the Punjab. So the stories that I've chosen to tell today are each from these three places. I'm telling you a story from Punjab, the place that nurtures me currently, a story from Tamil Nadu, which is the place that birthed me, and a story from Karnataka, which is the place that gave me the gift of storytelling. I hope you enjoy them. The Wrestler's Daughter, a folk tale from Punjab. Long time ago, in Punjab, there lived two wrestlers, Satinder and Jatinder. They lived in neighboring towns. Now, one day, Jatinder decided to go to Satinder's town and challenge him to a fight, for he had heard a lot about his prowess at wrestling. When he reached Satinder's house, he saw a young girl sweeping the stables where elephants were kept. She was Satinder's daughter, Lajja. One of the elephants was dead. Now the girl casually picked it up by its tail and swung it across the wall, as if it were just a mouse. Jatinder was gobsmacked. He approached the girl and asked her, is this Satinder's house? Yes, he's my papaji, my father. Is he at home? Oh no, you see, Papaji has dragged our 150 carts to the forest to collect firewood. He'll be back soon. Why don't you wait inside? No, thank you, but I'll go to the forest to look for him. Now, when he was in the forest, Jatinder saw his rival effortlessly drag his 150 carts laden with firewood. He decided to test his strength, so he hid behind a tree and waited for Satinder to pass by. When Satinder went past the tree, Jatinder held on to the last cart. Now Satinder couldn't move forward. He thought his cart was stuck in a ditch, and he came back to the back of the line to check what was wrong. And there he was, Jatinder. And he greeted Satinder with a sly laugh, and he said, I've heard much about your power and your skill. I'm Jatinder the wrestler from the neighboring town, and I challenge you to a wrestling match right here, right now. I see, but I don't fight without spectators around to watch, said Satinder proudly. Just then, an old lady passed by, carrying a pile of 200 rotis on her head. Rotis are flat bread. Jatinder stopped her and said, Biji, grandmother, we're wrestlers and we're about to have a fight and we need someone to watch us. Will you stay for a few minutes, please? Beta, I'd love to, but you see, my son, he is waiting for me. He has taken his 4,000 camels out to graze and he must be very hungry now. And I need to make sure that the stupid boy is not sleeping like he always does. BJ, it won't be long. I'll finish him off quickly, said Satinder. Well, in that case, why don't you both hop onto my palms and fight? That way, I can watch you and keep walking. What? Are you sure, BJ? Said Jatinder. And he was now beginning to feel a bit intimidated about the strength of the women in this town. Hop right on, said Biji. And so the two wrestlers each jumped onto a palm and began to fight. And now the old lady had warned her son that she would bring men to hit him up if he wasn't doing a good job of grazing the camels. In the distance, the old lady's son saw his mother walking towards him with two wrestlers on her palms and thought that he was going to get badly beaten up. He quickly took out his rumal or his handkerchief and threw in all the 4,000 camels, bundled it up, placed it on his head and began to run away. His mother saw him run and called out, Are, beta, ruk jao, wait, where are you going? I've brought you hot rotis. But the son was out of earshot. Oh no, my son, somebody stop him, please. The wrestlers stopped fighting and told the woman to calm down, and they promised to return with her son very soon. Meanwhile, an eagle was flying overhead. It saw the bundle on the man's head and thought that it was meat. It swooped down, grabbed the bundle, and flew away. The old woman's son was now distraught. He sat down in the middle of the ground and began to howl. Hi, my mother's going to kill me now. Hi, Rabba. The wrestlers caught up with him. Don't worry, young man, we'll help you find the bundle. And so saying, they followed the eagle all the while looking up at the sky. The eagle flew quite a distance, but soon it began to feel the weight of the bundle and couldn't carry on further. So then it decided to drop the bundle. Now the eagle was flying over a palace, and a princess was standing on her balcony looking out into the sky. Right at that point, the bundle landed in her eye. Ow, she said. You see, her eye was quite big, so the bundle didn't hurt her all that much. She simply took it out and threw it across the palace wall. The wrestlers and the old lady's son were right there and they caught it. And now they all went back to where the old lady was waiting. Ah, there you are, beta. She hugged her son. She thanked the wrestlers. And off they went, their separate ways. Now Satinder was a kind man. He turned to Jatinder and said, It is custom that a guest must be fed before sending him off. I'd like to invite you over to my house for dinner. When they reached his house, Lajja was already making the rotis and getting the dal ready. Lajja's rotis weren't ordinary rotis. They were as big as the moon itself. She began serving them when Jatinder looked at them and said, I possibly can't eat these. They're much too big. Oh well, said Lajja, and popped it in her mouth in one go, as if it were a toffee. She ate her share and all that was left. Would you like some dal at least? She asked, pointing to a large drum. I couldn't possibly have so much, said Jatinder. Too bad then, you'll just have to go hungry, said Lajja, and drank it all up in one go. Jatinder was astonished. First he had seen this girl pick up an elephant by the tail, and now she was eating all this food. He hit upon an idea. Lajja, why don't you come with me? I will present you to the king of Nabha, the town where I come from, and I will present you as the strongest woman in the entire country. The king will be pleased to have you in his kingdom. And all the while, he was secretly hoping that the king would reward him handsomely. All right, said Lajja. Will I get lots to eat? Of course, the king has plenty. But I can't leave my house and my father behind, said Lajja. Your father can come along, but we can't possibly take your house. Of course we can, she said, and she dug out her house from the ground and hoisted it on her shoulder. Jatinder couldn't believe his eyes. They set off to Nabha without wasting any time. Once they reached Nabha, Jatinder went straight to the king and presented Lajja. Maharaj, this is Lajja, the strongest woman in the entire country. Why, in the world even. She will be a great asset to your kingdom, Maharaj. You must have her stay. I see. If what you say is true,
Let's test it, said the king. He clapped his hands. Guards, bring me my 3 most powerful elephants, he ordered. Can you lift these elephants, girl? He asked.
Lajja looked at the elephants. Can I have some rope, Maharaj? She asked. The guards brought her a long rope. She tied all the 3 elephants together and tossed them over her shoulder. Where should I throw them now, Maharaj? On the roof, on the ground, or across the wall? The king saw this and he was both scared and horrified at the same time.
I don't know, on the roof maybe.
And Lajja twirled the rope with the elephants and threw it on the roof. No sooner had she done that than the elephants came crashing down along with the roof and went right through the floor of the palace.
The king was horrified. What have you done, you stupid girl? He growled.
Exactly what you asked me to do, Maharaj.
Jatinder, take this woman away right this second, and I don't want to see you or her ever again.
Back home, Lajja and her father were on the terrace laughing about the day's events. But the king was restless. He paced up and he paced down.
She is a dangerous woman. She might kill me one day if I don't kill her.
And so he collected his soldiers, guns and all, and approached Lajja's house. Lajja, from the terrace, caught sight of the approaching army. She came down onto the road and faced the king and his men.
The soldiers trained their guns at her, waiting for the orders from the king.
"Aha, here to kill me, are you?" she ridiculed. And with one hand, she picked up the king, his soldiers, and their guns, tucked them under her arm, and walked to the palace. And when she entered the palace, the courtiers saw this and fled for their lives. Lajja threw the king and his soldiers in jail. She declared herself the Queen of Nabha and made her father the minister. News of her strength traveled far and wide, and no king ever dared to attack. She ruled Nabha for many, many years as a wise, kind, and brave queen. And that's the end of that story. I love this story for many reasons. So where I live in Punjab, the women are mostly depicted in popular culture and in modern media as objects of desire and as things to be owned. And the narrative is dominated by patriarchy. But if you were to look at the folklore of Punjab, interestingly, women have always been shown in an extremely positive light. They are either witty people or they come across as strong-bodied women and as very strong-willed women and brave women. So this story connected with me at so many levels, and also add to the fact that it's exaggerated and it's a comical tall tale, that I thought that stories like these should be brought out even more and shared with the people of the world. I hope you liked it. Tell It to the Walls, a folk tale from Tamil Nadu taken from A.K. Ramanujan's Folk Tales from India. Once upon a time, there was a woman who lived with her husband and their 2 sons. They were a very close family. They spent happy times and sad times together. With time, the sons grew old enough to be married, and soon their weddings were arranged, one after the other. Their wives now came to live with them. After a few months of the son's wedding, the woman's husband died, and now she was under the care of her sons. After the initial days of mourning were over, the sons went back to their jobs as usual and got busy with their lives and their wives. They began to ignore their mother, and their wives weren't too bothered about the mother-in-law either. All day long, The poor woman sat in the corner of the living room all alone, brooding and thinking about times that went past. One day, the first daughter-in-law said to the other, "Look at her. All she does is mope, 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 as if the world has come to an end." They got tired of her sitting around doing nothing and started treating her quite badly. The woman had no one to whom she could turn and tell her woes to and share her pain with. And she grew fatter and fatter as she kept the tales of woe to herself. Her sons and daughters-in-law made fun of her for growing fatter by the day and asked her to eat less. Frustrated at her life, the woman one day decided to walk away from the house. She walked and she walked and she walked till she came to an old deserted house outside of town. As soon as she entered the house, she found herself in an empty room. And she was so overcome by grief, she couldn't bear to keep her misery to herself any longer. She turned to one wall and poured out her woes against her first son. No sooner had she finished telling her tales than the wall began to tremble and shake. Dhada 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 dhamal. Under the weight of her woes, it crashed and fell down in a heap. And suddenly, the woman felt a certain lightness in her legs. She decided to go back home. That night, she talked a little to everyone, which was unusual, and she went to bed. The next day, she went back to the old deserted house. And this time, she turned to another wall and began to pour out her grievances against her first daughter-in-law. No sooner had she finished telling her stories than the wall began to tremble and shake. Under the weight of her grief, it crashed and fell in a heap. And now the woman felt a lightness come over her torso. That evening, when she went back home, she talked a little to everyone and laughed, which was rather unusual, and she went to bed. On the third day, she went back to the old deserted house, and this time she turned to another wall and began to pour out her complaints against her second son. No sooner had she finished lamenting than the wall began to tremble and shake. Under the weight of her complaints, it crashed and fell down in a heap. And now the woman felt a lightness come over her neck and her shoulders. And that evening, when she went back home, she talked a little to everyone, she laughed, and she even sang a song to herself, which was unusual, and went to bed. On the fourth day, she went back to the old deserted house. This time, she turned to the last wall standing and began to pour out her troubles against her second daughter-in-law. No sooner had she finished her gripe than the wall began to tremble and shake. Under the weight of her troubles, it crashed and fell down in a heap. And now the woman felt a lightness come over her face and her head. That evening, when she went back home, she talked a little to everyone. She laughed. She sang a song to herself. And she even offered to cook a meal, which was unusual. And she went to bed. The next day, when she woke, she looked at herself in the mirror. She found she had actually lost all the weight that she had gained in her sadness. She felt lighter in mood and in body, and a radiance had come over her face. Now, we don't know if the lady's sons and daughters in law changed their attitudes towards her, but we do know that the lady had found her peace because she had told it to the walls. So, this story has a rather personal angle to it. When I first heard it, I was reminded of my maternal grandmother. She was a very, very strong woman and she'd been through several ups and downs in her life. And towards the end of her days, she had a lot of sadness in her heart and she barely spoke about it to anyone. She also had a lot of physical pain, for she was severely arthritic. And a lot of that pain had to do with the fact that she kept a lot of things inside. And then one day she told me that she had decided to write it all down. And she wrote and she wrote and she wrote several sheets of paper of all the things that she wanted to talk about. And then she said, I've torn it all up. I don't want anyone to read it. And I'm okay now. So this story is a tribute to her. The Kingdom of Fools, a folktale from Karnataka, adapted from A.K. Ramanujan's Folk Tales from India. There was once a kingdom in which both the king and the minister were idiots. They wanted to be different. So, on a whim one day, they decided to make sweeping changes to the country. First, they decided to turn day into night and night into day. They ordered that everyone should be awake at night, run their businesses, plow their fields, and that they should go to sleep when the sun came up in the morning. The second thing that they did was to decree that everything in the kingdom would cost just one duddu or a rupee. So no matter whether it was a bar of gold or a banana, everything would cost 1 and 1 rupee only. Now, if the people protested or if they had a problem with these changes, well, too bad, they had to obey or else they would be put to death. The people did as they were told because you see, they were after all afraid for their lives. And so the king and the minister were very pleased with the success of their plan, for everything seemed to be working well. One day, a guru or a highly learned person and his disciple arrived in the kingdom. It was a beautiful kingdom, they observed, and it was broad daylight when they came, but there was not a soul in sight. Everyone was fast asleep and not a sound could be heard. The cows and the dogs were asleep too. The two men were amazed by what they saw around them and they wandered about town till evening, when suddenly the whole town woke up and it came alive and everybody began to go about their daily business. Now the two men were hungry and they found this whole situation rather strange, so they went to an eatery to buy some food. And to their astonishment, they found that everything cost the same, a single duddu or a single rupee. The guru and his disciple were quite delighted, for they had never seen anything like this before. They could buy all the food that they wanted for just 1 rupee. When they had eaten, the guru realized that all was not well with this kingdom, and that the king who ruled them must certainly be a fool to run the kingdom in this way. This is no place for us. Let's go, he said to his disciple. But his disciple was quite a foodie, didn't want to leave the place. Everything here was cheap and all he wanted was good, cheap food. So the guru said, "Look, these are fools. This is not going to last very long and you can never tell what they might do to you next.
so you better come with me." But the disciple was very stubborn. He wanted to stay. "Do what you want. I'm going," said the Guru, and he left. The disciple stayed on. He ate his fill every day and grew as fat as a pumpkin. Now, it so happened that one bright day, a thief broke into a rich man's house. He had made a hole in the wall and he sneaked in. And as he was carrying out his loot on his head, the wall of the old house collapsed on his head and killed him on the spot. No, this is not the same wall that the woman brought down with her story. So this man's brother, the burglar's brother, ran to the king and he explained, "Your Highness, my brother, he was pursuing his family trade when a wall fell on him and killed him. This merchant whose house he had gone to burgle is to blame. He should have built a good wall, a good strong wall. You must punish him and compensate the family for this injustice and for this loss." The king listened and said, "Justice will be done, don't worry." And at once he ordered the owner of the house to be brought in. The merchant arrived. "Were you at home when the dead man burgled your house?" asked the king. Yes, my lord. He broke in and the wall was weak. It fell on him and broke. What could I do?" "Your wall has killed this man's brother. You have murdered a man and we have to punish you." "Lord, please, I didn't put up this wall. It's really the fault of the bricklayer who built this wall. You should ask him. He didn't build it right. Please bring him and punish him." "And who is this bricklayer?" asked the king. "My lord, this wall was built in my father's time. I know the man who built the wall then. He's an old man now, but he lives nearby." The king sent out messengers to bring the bricklayer who had built the wall. The bricklayer was brought in. "You then, did you build this man's wall in his father's time?" asked the king. The bricklayer bent and said, "Yes, my lord, I did." "Well, you didn't build it well, and it has fallen on a poor man and killed him. Do you know that? You've murdered him, and we have to punish you by death." Please listen to me before you give out your orders, O Lord. It's true that I built this wall, and it was no good, but that was because my mind was not on it that day. "Why? What were you thinking?" asked the king. I remember very well, my lord. There was a beautiful woman who was going up and down that street all day and with her anklets jingling. And I couldn't keep my eyes or my mind on the wall I was building. It's her fault. You must get that woman. I know where she lives." "I see. You're right. The case certainly is not as simple as it seems. We must look into it. It is not easy to judge such complicated matters. Let's get that woman, wherever she is," said the king. The woman, now old and bent with age, came trembling to the court. The king looked at the woman and asked, "Did you walk up and down that street many years ago while this poor man was building a wall?" "Yes, my lord. I remember it very well." "Aha, so you did walk up and down with your anklets jingling. You were young and you tempted the bricklayer and that made him build a bad wall, and now that wall has fallen on a poor burglar and killed him. You are responsible for the killing of an innocent man, and you will have to be punished." "My lord, please wait. I remember why I was walking up and down that street.
I'd given some gold to a goldsmith to make some jewelry for me. But that man, he was such a lazy person. He made me walk up and down so many times. He gave me so many excuses. He said he would give it today, he would give it tomorrow, he would give it now, he would give it later. And so I had to go to his house so many times, and that made me walk up and down the street. And that was when this bricklayer fellow saw me. It's not my fault, oh my lord. It's that damn goldsmith. Ah. Poor thing. She's absolutely right, thought the king, weighing the evidence. But we now seem to have got the real culprit at last. Get the goldsmith, wherever he is hiding, at once. And so the king's men searched for the goldsmith, who was hiding in a corner of his shop. When he heard the accusation against him, he had his own story to tell. My lord, I'm a poor goldsmith. It's true that I made this woman come to my door many times. I gave her many excuses because I couldn't finish making her jewelry. I had to finish a rich merchant's orders who insisted on getting his jewelry first because there was a wedding in his family and he just wouldn't wait. You know how impatient these rich men are. It's not my fault, my lord. Aha. And who is this rich merchant who kept you from finishing this poor woman's jewelry? Which made her walk up and down? Which distracted this bricklayer? Which made a mess of his wall? Which has now fallen on an innocent man and killed him? Can you name that man? Who is he? Asked the king. The goldsmith named the merchant, who was none other than the original owner of the house where the wall had fallen. Now, justice had come full circle, back to the merchant. Now, he was rudely summoned back to the court, and he arrived crying. Oh Lord, it's not me, but my father who ordered the jewelry. He is dead and I am innocent. Please spare me. But the king consulted his minister and he gave a decision. It's true that your father is the true murderer. He is dead, but somebody must be punished in his place. You've inherited everything from that criminal father of yours, his riches, and now his sins as well. I knew at once when I first set my eyes on you that you were at the root of this horrible, horrible crime, and now you must die. In those days, men were put to death at the stake. So the king ordered a new stake to be made ready for the execution. And suddenly, it occurred to the minister that this rich merchant, although he was prosperous, was fairly thin to be properly executed by the stake. Oh Lord, the stake will not go through this man properly, for he is much too skinny. The king saw reason and indeed began to worry about it. What shall we do? Yes! Let's get a fat man. And so servants were immediately sent all over town to look for a man who would fit the stake. And who should their eyes fall upon than the very disciple of the Guru who had fattened himself for months on bananas and ghee and rice and wheat. What wrong have I done? I'm innocent, he cried. That may be true, but it's the royal decree that we should find a fat man to fit the stake, the guards said, and carried him to the palace for his execution. The disciple remembered his wise guru's words. This is a city of fools. You don't know what they will do to you next. While he was waiting for death, he prayed to his guru and chanted, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. He pleaded to his guru to hear his cry wherever he was. And with his magical powers, the Guru saw everything in a vision. He could see near, he could see far, he could see into the future, he could see into the past, and he could see into the present. The Guru arrived at once to save his disciple who had gotten himself into trouble again because of his gluttony. As soon as he arrived, he scolded the disciple and he told him something in a whisper. And then he went to the king and addressed him. "O wise king, who is greater, the Guru or the disciple?" "Of course the Guru, no doubt about it. Why do you ask?" "Then put me to the stake first. Put my disciple to death after me." When the disciple heard this, he caught on. He knew where his Guru was going with this. No, me first. You brought me here first. Put me to death first. Not my Guru. No, please. The Guru and the disciple now got into a fight about who should go first. The king was rather puzzled by this behavior and he asked the Guru, "Why do you want to die? We chose him because we needed a fat man for the stake." "Will you promise to put me to death if I tell you the secret, O Lord?" asked the Guru. The king gave him his solemn word, and the Guru took him aside, out of his servant's earshot, and whispered to him, "Do you know why we want to die right now, the two of us? You see, we are poor ascetics and we've been all over the world, but we've never found a city like this or a king like you. That stake is a stake of God, for it's new and it has not been used before. It has never had a criminal on it. So whoever dies on it first will be reborn as the king of this country, and whoever goes next will be the future minister. We are sick of this life. It would be nice to enjoy ourselves as king and minister for a while. Now keep your word, my lord, and put us to death. Me first, remember." The king was now thrown into deep thought. He didn't want to lose the kingdom to someone else, even if it were in the next birth. He needed time. So he postponed the execution to the next day. And then he talked in secret with his minister. "It's not right for us to give over the kingdom to others in the next life. Let's go up to the stake ourselves and we'll be reborn as king and minister again. Holy men like this one, they do not tell lies," said the king. And the minister gladly agreed. And so he told the executioners, "We'll send the criminals when it's pitch dark. Do not try to light a fire. When the first man comes to you, put him to death first, and then do the same to the second man. Do you understand? These are orders. Don't make any mistakes." That night, they went secretly to the prison. They released the Guru and his disciple, and they disguised themselves as the Guru and the disciple, and they had arranged beforehand with their loyal servants that they were to be taken to the stake and promptly executed. The next day, everyone realized what had happened when they saw the bodies of the king and the minister. The entire city was in pandemonium. The people mourned and discussed the future of the kingdom. Some people suddenly thought of the Guru and the disciple who were busy leaving the kingdom. But they called them back and said, "We people need a king and a minister." And the others agreed. They begged the Guru and the disciple, please, be our king, be our minister." But the Guru was above all of this and he declined. Instead, he told the people to choose a leader from amongst themselves. But he did ask them to promise him one thing. He said, "Whoever becomes king will turn night into night and day into day, and fix the right prices for things, not just a rupee. And so it was. Soon the kingdom became a normal place. So I chose to tell this story because political satire is a genre of storytelling that I enjoy a lot. And this story, although it's a folk tale and it's so old, still has beautiful resemblance to modern politics. So we've seen governments all over the world taking decisions that they think are in the best interests of their people, but we've seen the very same decisions backfire. And this story holds a mirror to politics all over the world and to governments all over the world, I'd say. Also, this story leaves us with a sense of hope, and considering that we are living under such strange circumstances, the story does tell us that a new normal will come in, and hopefully it will be a normal that is more respectful of the environment, one that is more conscious, and where people truly start thinking and reflecting about their lives. So I hope you liked the stories that I presented to you today. If you did, leave a comment. You can connect with me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, or you could even choose to send me an email, and I'd love to be in touch with you and bond over stories. And again, a big thank you to World Storytelling Cafe and John Rowe for curating this beautiful platform, and more power and more stories to all of you. Thanks for watching.
Did you enjoy that storyteller? Of course you did. And if you enjoyed it, like the minstrels of old, we're passing round the hat. And if you have some, whether it's paper or coin, our storytellers would appreciate what you put in. Every penny you put in goes directly to that storyteller through paper. All you have to do is go to worldstorytellingcafe.com. Click on today's stories or click on that storyteller, and there'll be a hat below the story. And you can just drop a little in that hat. Well, thank you for listening. And if you can afford it, we'd appreciate it.